Today we dive into the scandalous, the salacious, and the downright bizarre secrets of King Charles II. Prepare your popcorn and your monocles, because this royal expose is going to be one for the history books. Number 1. The sly silver-tongued sweet talker. Picture this. King Charles II could charm the warts off a toad. He had a way with words that made even the sternest Puritans giggle like schoolgirls. Charles II's love letters? Shakespeare could have taken notes. His words were smoother than a freshly buttered crumpet. Known for his late-night rendezvous, Charles would often slip into private quarters, whispering sweet nothings that could melt the iciest of hearts. He was so persuasive that he convinced Parliament to fund his extravagant lifestyle, repeatedly. Talk about a silver tongue. Charles's seduction skills were legendary. He could talk his way into and out of just about anything, including trouble. Even his enemies couldn't resist his charm. They'd leave hating him a little less and laughing a lot more. Charles's wit was quicker than a squirrel on espresso. He once talked his way out of a duel by making his opponent laugh until he cried. He turned flattery into an art form. Compliments from Charles could make a peasant feel like a prince or a courtier feel like a king. At parties, he was the life of the gathering, entertaining everyone with jokes that were as scandalous as they were hilarious. His charisma was so potent, some say it could have powered the entire city of London if only they had harnessed it. Number 2. The Mistress Marathon. Charles II wasn't just running the country, he was also running a marathon of mistresses. He had more mistresses than Buckingham Palace had chandeliers. His most famous mistress, Nell Gwynn, was an actress with a wit as sharp as a rapier and a sense of humor to match. They were the Brangelina of their time. Barbara Palmer, the Countess of Castlemaine, was another favorite. She was known for her fiery temper and even hotter romance with Charles. Louise de Keroualle, the French spy-turned-mistress, added a touch of international intrigue to Charles's love life. Charles fathered at least 14 illegitimate children. That's more kids than a royal nursery. Move over, modern celebrities. His mistresses often vied for his attention, leading to palace drama that would put today's reality TV to shame. Charles's affairs were so well known that they became the gossip of the entire kingdom, spreading faster than a rumor at a royal court. Despite his wandering eye, Charles managed to maintain a relatively harmonious court. He could juggle mistresses better than a circus performer. Some say Charles's mistresses wielded more power than his ministers. Talk about pillow talk with perks. The king's romantic escapades were legendary, making him the ultimate Casanova of the 17th century. Number 3. The fashion-forward fop. Charles II wasn't just a king, he was a fashion icon. He brought back the lace, the frills, and the wigs that could double as bird nests. His wardrobe was more elaborate than a Shakespearean play. He had outfits for every occasion, from hunting to flirting. Charles introduced the three-piece suit to England. Yes, we have him to thank for modern business attire. Who knew royalty could be so relevant? He loved extravagant fabrics and was often seen in velvet, silk, and satin. His wardrobe was a tactile experience. Charles's love for wigs was unparalleled. He had wigs for every mood, including "I just woke up and I'm ruling a kingdom." His boots were the envy of every nobleman. Made from the finest leather, they were more polished than a politician's promises. Charles set trends that even the common folk tried to follow. It's said that his style was the medieval equivalent of going viral. His court was a fashion show, with courtiers trying to outdo each other and the king. It was Project Runway, Royal Edition. Charles's style choices were often influenced by his mistresses. They were his fashion consultants, whether he liked it or not. Despite the extravagance, Charles's fashion sense was practical for a king who loved to party. His clothes were designed for dancing, dining, and a dash of debauchery. Number 4. The Party King. Charles II was the ultimate party animal. If there was a celebration, he was there, probably with a drink in one hand and a mistress in the other. He reintroduced Christmas celebrations after the Puritans banned them. Charles was the original holiday hero, saving Christmas for all. His court was renowned for its lavish parties, complete with music, dancing, and enough food to feed an army. Charles loved masquerades. It was the perfect excuse for everyone to get dressed up and misbehave anonymously. The king's birthday parties were legendary. They were like the Met Gala, but with more ruffles and less social media. He had a knack for making every event unforgettable. From weddings to state dinners, if Charles was hosting, it was the place to be. His parties often included elaborate fireworks displays. They were so grand, they made New Year's Eve in Times Square look like a sparkler in a backyard. Charles's love for theatre was evident in his parties. He often hired actors and musicians to entertain his guests. It was a royal variety show. Despite the extravagance, Charles's parties had a relaxed atmosphere. He wanted everyone to have fun, even if it meant breaking a few rules. The king's parties were the talk of the town. Invitations were coveted, and those who attended had stories to tell for years. Number 5. The Foodie King. Charles II had a royal appetite. He loved food almost as much as he loved his mistresses almost. His banquets were the stuff of legends, featuring exotic dishes from all over the world. Think of it as the original Food Network special. Charles introduced the pineapple to England. It became a status symbol, often displayed but rarely eaten. A bit like an edible iPhone. He had a sweet tooth and adored desserts. His chefs were the best in the kingdom, creating pastries that could make angels weep. Charles loved roast meats. His tables groaned under the weight of venison, beef and boar. Vegetarians, look away. He was a fan of wine, particularly French vintages. His wine cellar was better stocked than a modern liquor store. Charles enjoyed hosting feasts that lasted for days. His guests needed the stamina of marathon runners to keep up. Despite the opulence, Charles appreciated simple pleasures, like a well-cooked pie. He was a king with a commoner's taste buds. His love for food was matched by his generosity. He often shared his bounty with the less fortunate, proving that even kings can be kind. Charles's banquets were more than meals. They were events, complete with entertainment, music, and of course scandalous gossip. Number 6. The Dog Lover. Charles II was obsessed with his spaniels. He had so many, it's a wonder the palace didn't turn into a giant kennel. His favorite dog, named Old Rowley, was so beloved that the king was often seen carrying him around like a royal accessory. Charles's spaniels were pampered more than most nobles. They had their own attendants and lived in the lap of luxury. The king's love for his dogs was so well known that his court was filled with portraits of him and his furry friends. Charles's dogs had free reign of the palace. They went wherever they pleased, much to the chagrin of his courtiers. His dogs often accompanied him to official meetings. It's rumored that some important decisions were influenced by a wagging tail. The king's affection for his dogs was matched by their loyalty. They followed him everywhere, even to the most private chambers. Charles's dogs were known to be mischievous. They once disrupted a state banquet, causing chaos that the king found hilarious. His spaniels were so famous that they became a popular breed in England. Charles II, royal trendsetter and canine influencer. The king's love for his dogs was immortalized in art, literature, and even in the breed's name. The Cavalier King Charles Spaniel. Number 7. The Science Buff. Charles II had a secret passion for science. He was a royal nerd before it was cool. He founded the Royal Society in 1660, a scientific institution that still exists today. Talk about a legacy. Charles was fascinated by astronomy and often spent nights stargazing. He even had his own telescope. Move over, Galileo. He was interested in medicine and supported many early medical experiments, some of which were groundbreaking and others eyebrow-raising. Charles loved chemistry and had a personal lab where he conducted experiments. He was the original Breaking Bad minus the crime. He encouraged innovation and was a patron of many inventors, including Robert Hooke and Isaac Newton. Not a bad crowd to hang out with. Charles's interest in science wasn't just for show. He genuinely believed in the power of knowledge to improve society. His curiosity led to many advancements during his reign, from improved naval technology to the development of better clocks. Despite his love for science, Charles was superstitious. He believed in astrology and often consulted horoscopes before making decisions. The king's scientific pursuits were often overshadowed by his scandalous personal life, but make no mistake, he was a brainy royal. Number 8. The Escape Artist. Charles II was an expert at dodging danger. His most famous escape: fleeing from the Battle of Worcester in 1651. He hid in an oak tree to avoid capture by the parliamentarians. This daring escape became legendary, and the tree is known as the Royal Oak. Charles spent 6 weeks on the run, disguised as a commoner. He even pretended to be a servant. Talk about a royal role reversal. He evaded capture by constantly changing his appearance and moving from one safe house to another. Charles was the original master of disguise. His escape route took him through some of England's most scenic countryside, which he appreciated even while being hunted. Charles received help from loyal supporters who risked their lives to keep him safe. The king had more allies than a superhero. He narrowly avoided capture multiple times. At one point, he was just inches away from being discovered by enemy soldiers. Charles's ability to think on his feet and adapt to changing situations was key to his survival. He was as cunning as a fox. His escape was so dramatic that it was later romanticized in books, plays, and songs. Charles II, the action hero of his time. Despite the danger, Charles never lost his sense of humor. He joked with his companions, even in the face of adversity. Number 9. The Bedroom Diplomat. Charles II used his bedroom as a diplomatic chamber, forging alliances one pillow talk at a time. Who needs treaties when you have charm? He famously wooed Louise de Keroualle, a French noblewoman, turning her into both a mistress and a political ally. Talk about multitasking. Charles's bedchamber was more international than the United Nations. He welcomed mistresses from France, Portugal, and even Italy. No visa required. He often joked that he spent more time negotiating under the sheets than at the negotiating table. His courtiers might have agreed. Charles's bedroom diplomacy was so successful that some historians believe it helped ease tensions between England and France. Who knew seduction could be so strategic? His mistresses were often gifted with titles and lands, making them powerful allies. Pillow politics at its finest. Charles was known to discuss state matters with his lovers. Some of his most important decisions might have been made in bed. Talk about pillow talk with perks. He was a master at balancing his romantic and political relationships, ensuring neither his lovers nor his allies felt neglected. A true juggler of hearts. Despite his many affairs, Charles managed to keep his court relatively scandal-free. He was as discreet as he was dashing. The king's bedroom diplomacy was an open secret, making him both the most envied and the most scrutinized monarch of his time. 10. The Naughty Night Owl. Charles II was known for his late-night escapades, often sneaking out of the palace to rendezvous with his many lovers, the original night owl. He once disguised himself as a commoner to visit Nell Gwyn's home, proving that even kings enjoy a bit of adventure. His nocturnal activities were so legendary that they became the subject of countless gossip columns. Medieval TMZ, anyone? Charles was known to host private parties that lasted until dawn, filled with music, dancing, and plenty of romantic intrigue. He often joked that he did his best thinking at night, surrounded by beautiful women. Who needs sleep when you have scandal? Charles's nighttime adventures were not without risk. He once narrowly avoided capture by jealous husbands and angry fathers. Close call. His love for the nightlife earned him the nickname the Merry Monarch, a title he wore with pride. Despite his wild ways, Charles was surprisingly punctual for his royal duties. He could party all night and still rule by day. Talk about stamina. His escapades often included elaborate disguises, allowing him to move incognito through the city. Charles, the original master of disguise. The king's nocturnal activities were an open secret, adding to his reputation as one of the most charismatic and adventurous monarchs in history.